Okay, now we can start our webinar with Bilal Succar. I'm going to present you, Bilal, if you would like to add anything. Well, Bilal Succar is Director of Change Agents, AEC. He's also founder of the BIM-E initiative and head editor of the BIM dictionary. Bilal is the author of one of the most cited articles of automation in construction, which is a framework of building, conceptual framework for building information modeling. I remember that when I first read this article in 2009, when it was published, I spread the word out about the article. It made me understand building information modeling the way I hadn't before. I started using in my classes, and it really is a turning point. It's also one of the most cited reference in articles scientific articles that develop building information modeling. Today here we have Bilal with us to tackle the subject of BIM competence terminologies, which is so dear to us professors when we decide to include BIM in one of our classes. So Bilal, the word is with you now. Thank you so much to be here with us, because in Australia, it's midnight right now, okay? Thank you so much, Bilal.
Thank you so much, Regina, for the beautiful introduction, and thank you for the invitation. I really like your background, by the way. The green is amazing. I'm just going to try to share my screen, see if everything is working properly. Okay, let's just share. And okay, just let me know. I can't see you now, but can you see everything?
Not yet, no. Starting to share something, yes. Okay.
Okay, all good. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. And as Regina mentioned, the topic of competence is very dear to anyone who deals with performance, students, of course. So I'm going to tackle it in a I'm not sure if this is the expected way, but I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned over the past 10 years. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar. Maybe some of you would be familiar with another framework or a model developed back in 2013 with Professor Scher and Tony Williams, and it tackles the issue of competence, and it also offers like a way of thinking about competence in an integrated way. I'm going to try to stick to the time, and maybe we'll have enough opportunity to little bit of opportunity to have a discussion. So I'm going to just jump directly into it. So today's short presentation about this topic is about really whether we need an integrated competence model, and I'm going to tackle it from the perspective of, if we want to build an integrated competence model, what is it? What are the components for that model? And because I already developed something like that like nearly 10 years ago and used it extensively, I'm going to share with you the things that need to be improved in it, and show you what's been done, and hopefully we can then discuss what does this mean with regards to learning and education, training, etc. So as Regina mentioned, I'm founder of the BIM-E initiative. Maybe some of you would not know what the initiative is. Of course, I've seen familiar faces, like on the screen. I saw Regina, so Caroline. So I'm not sure if there are others as part of the initiative, but it's a not-for-profit community, maybe similar to what you're doing, but it includes maybe a 50%, nearly 50% participation from industry, and of course the other half coming from academia. So we're all researchers trying to figure out some complex issues. Try to offer it as a quite little bit of an alternative to authority-led approaches, like approaches which are driven by governments or funded by large institutions. So it's kind of a ground up approach. I'm sorry, do you still see my presentation?
No.
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 Okay, sorry, I'll just try again. Okay. And it tries to offer a kind of a response to all the challenges we are all facing. It's supported by commercial organizations a bit, but mostly it is the work of volunteers. And as I mentioned, Carolina and Professor Regina are really great contributors to the initiative. Today's presentation: what is competence? And I'm going to use competence and competency to mean the same thing, because really there's no difference depending where you read. It's either used as competency or competence, and why it is necessary to have an integrated competence model. So that's our first part. Second part is I'm going to revisit the model developed and published back in 2013 in Automation and Construction, and maybe we can expand on it a bit. And then I'm going to merge the research done back in 2013 with the work being done with the BIMI initiative, and try to improve this integrated competence model, or the competence model, by bringing in materials from the initiative and from other work I do. Finally, summary, and hopefully have a rich discussion. So what is competence, and why is an integrated competence model not only needed, it's really necessary? Competence, I'm not going to go into this too deeply. You're the experts. This is my understanding of the topic, what I use in the work we do, in the kind of materials we generate. But you could find tens of definitions. One of them is very simple. It says it's a combination of skills. Some people add ability. Some people add, they differentiate abilities from knowledge. Other people add traits, etc. So really, what's important about competence is that it needs to really be measurable. So really, the key word is measurable, and competence also need be able to be acquired. So somebody can learn it. Okay. So for example, someone who is tall, that's not a competence. Okay, you cannot, people can learn to be tall, correct? But a language, learning a language, riding a bicycle, racing, cars, etc. All these are competencies. And if you like to see more definitions in the original paper, you'll find many of them. So let's just use that simple introduction to the term competence to mean like a combination of abilities. It's an experience, it's knowledge, it's a trait, etc. But it must be measurable, and it can be acquired. And then we say, okay, so if we're using the term competence and we want to develop a model for competence, what is really an integrated competence model, and why is it necessary? I'm gonna just delay explaining the details of an integrated competence model till later. Maybe you can discuss it more in the summary, but I'm gonna just tackle it as if the understanding of the need of a competence model is there in the audience. They understand that a competence model is kind of a combination of taxonomies interconnected through relations, and it can be used to deliver learning materials, assessment models, etc. And I'm going to show some examples of that. But I'm going to focus in this slide on the need for an integrated competence model mainly. And integration, the term integration, I don't explain it in this presentation, comes from other work that I've published, where the term integration comes as the fourth level in a maturity set of levels. So meaning when we start defining any topic, doesn't matter if it's about capability or competence or anything, when we don't have a definition of it, we call it ad hoc, or we refer to it as ad hoc or initial. But then it gets defined, and then it gets managed, and then it gets integrated. So really, integration is a high level of maturity of any topic. So when we say integrated competence model, it means that already the competences are defined, they are well managed by an actor, it could be a human or a system, and then they are integrated. So if the industry is moving fast towards digital transformation, or it's already transforming in a sense that it is acquiring the abilities to deliver virtual assets and then transform them into physical assets, and then transform these physical assets back into digital assets, and then couple these, coupling physical and digital, then there's and we can see this. You can see this in across the world actually. So it's kind of a rapid transformation, which it's rapid not in a sense that it is like we can't see it happening. It's rapid when we compare it to our ability to manage that transformation when dealing with education and training materials. You may disagree with me here, or you agree, but this is what is witnessed when dealing with organizations as they train their new staff or the students fresh out of university. There's kind of disconnect between education they receive and on-job, the job competences they need, especially when it comes to topics of digital transformation, information management, for example. There's a need for a golden thread, and I don't know if you've this term is familiar to you, but it's a term that has been made famous because of a tragedy in the UK, where when if you heard of the towers burning, and then people losing their lives, and then they discovered that it's all related to construction materials quality, and the discussion became about, okay, who installed this material? When was it installed? Was the person competent? And the discussion was, we need a golden thread to connect the finished, installed, maintained product with not only with the construction, but also with the design, with the product details, etc. And integrated competence model allows or respects the need for a golden thread. By the nature of the model, it can provide a thread that connects the competence of competence of the actor, that what the actor can do, what the actor has done, and who is the actor. Also, as a competence model, it allows for higher granularity, so we can go into more detail. Because the nature of competence models, or most of them, they are composed of like an inventory of competence items. So it allows higher granularity in establishing the competences, measuring them, etc. And you'll notice even through standardization, there's a shift in the use of language from roles and like fixed roles and things that we are all used to functions. Like on the project now, and if you look at standardization, they don't discuss roles, they discuss functions. Something that needs to be done, it doesn't matter who does it. Actually, the same task or activity is done by like say an architect at one point, or an owner at one point, the same function can be done by a different actor at different milestone in the project. As mentioned in Golden Thread, there's a need for like a better competence assurance. There's a need to embrace automation, so the need for granularity when discussing education and learning and training. So rather than having like a broad description of what a person is, being like, let's say someone is an engineer, what does an engineer mean? It's better to explain that this from an outcome perspective or a task perspective, that this is an engineering task, and this is the definition of that engineering task, whether it is about design or construction or simulation or anything. And by granularly defining these abilities, it allows automation. Automation, of course, relies on the task being defined really clearly. And as shown by the pandemic, there's a need to digitalize ways how education is delivered and consumed, if we can use that word. So the competence model and integrated competence model in particular allows more like flexibility in digitalizing learning and education because of its nature, of its granularity, of its measurability. And it also allows matching learners to learning providers, learning materials. This is also another paper. I'm not going to go in detail here. And so really integrated competence model comes to address a mismatch between an education program, a qualification program across markets, because many of the challenges we face, especially large organizations face, which are like international companies, there is no like-to-like comparison between one degree and another. So unless these degrees or qualifications are broken down into their component parts, and then these component parts are compared, it's very difficult to say that an engineer coming from, Quebec is the same as an engineer coming from Vancouver in the same country, or across countries and across continents, of course. So what can integrated competence model do? It can address many of the things mentioned before. It can connect learning outcomes, assessment. It can connect managed systems. Because as I said, integration is a higher level. Integration is when we connect or manage systems, and managed systems are composed of a well-defined components. So you cannot have a managed system if it's not well-defined, and you cannot have an integrated system unless it is managed. So really, there is a need for this integration because it increases efficiency in managing competence, modeling, profiling, etc. Because of the digitalization, by the nature of integration for competence model, it is also digital, so there is already that efficiency there. Integrated competence model allows connecting profiles, comparing roles to project requirements. It allows micro-accreditation rather than what we refer to, as a compound qualification. As you know, like when we say an engineer, that's really a compound qualification, includes so many things in it, so many competences and traits, cultural issues related to engineering, personal leadership qualities, etc. So competence models allow focusing on specific things within a profile of a person, rather than just using a compound qualification. It just minimizes the need for it. It doesn't mean it replaces it. No, it just means that it can complement it. In some rare, small cases, contextual cases, it can replace it. Competence models, there's many benefits to them. It allow, they allow automation. It can be connected to other integrated models for learning, for whatever, allows better analytics, etc., etc. So just a quick research note about the method used in this work. Typically in all the research, I participate in, it has been either design science research, and we use the cycles, of course, within the DSR, and neural research cycle. And I've been using neural research cycle in my work for a lot. It's really helped me in focusing on how to iterate from basic conceptual models up to compound models and frameworks. And by combining both, and there's a section about this in the latest paper with my colleague Eric Poirier. We combine these two models, and we use this combined model in guiding our research. It's going to be available for you if you're interested in this, and or you have questions about it. But I'm just going to skip it because I think I'm already behind. Now, when it comes to competence modeling, as mentioned in 2013, we published a paper, and that paper has really guided a lot of work, that I do as part of my company, and also I do as part of the research community I'm part of. And this is the AAA model, and refer to AAA because it really is about assessment, how we can use what we refer to as competence items, the same competence items to assess, to acquire or learn, or to apply, meaning to implement. So assess, acquire, and apply, and it's really made of these competency items, and I'll show an example what that means in different ways. And by using it in different ways, we can have connections between what is assessed, what is learned, and what is implemented. So this is an example of a competency item or competence item. It's kind of like a sentence, but it's used in different ways. So for example, here, establish the project's information requirements. And if we apply the AAA model, we see that we can use this sentence with some syntax to do assessment. So for example, if you have a survey tool, we can use that statement to ask, do you have the ability to do this? Or if you're an educator, do you have the ability to teach this? For learning, we can use that statement also as to define the learning outcome, or we can use it as a task within a task management solution or a project management tool in order to say, during this project, you need to do this. Now, this model allows then using simple statements, like of course they're structured, to do an assessment, to formalize learning outcomes, but also to implement. And this is the work done back in 2013, published in 2013, and it's been used in projects. These are just sample projects which are non-commercial. This is a study done with Institute of Architecture in Australia. This was a large project, 3 years project in Qatar, where we did an assessment using these competency items, this competency model, to establish, to create a benchmark of the BIM competency of industry practitioners. This was done with University of Teesside, Northumbria, and Qatar University. And we use the AAA model and the competency items in particular to develop survey tools and to develop, seed framework for education. I will also been party with others to review Building Smart International's current review qualification, one of the things that now Building Smart International offers. And I've used the competence model as a lens to understand where they're going and provide recommendations. Now, this over these 10 years, many hundreds and over hundreds, and could say thousands of individuals were assessed based on this model, on these competency items, which are, classified into topics, etc. But it also showed some semantic limitations, and it needed to be improved. And I want to discuss with you, how the improvements made and how these will lead to a better competence model to make it truly integrated. So working using the same logic, we're gonna look at competency item and see how I'm gonna move from a competency item to something referred to as action statement, which is the same sentence, if you notice here, but now it has been formalized more. It's now connected better to a conceptual ontology. Now we have something called actions, and it is connected to the International BIM Dictionary. So the same sentence is now just better structured. And to do this, it takes us to how the work of the BIM initiative, the BIM Excellence Initiative, helps to move the 10 years model forward and to make it more suited for automation, more suited for integration, more suited for lots of things that could come. Like, for example, one of the aims would be, once we launch the specific project and initiative related to this, would be to create a competency ledger and then try to create a thread on a blockchain. So how does the initiative help here? And if you're familiar with the initiative, you may find some of this. If you've seen this before, if you're not, I invite you later to follow the links, and maybe if you're interested in this, maybe read the documents related, like to this model and others, which I wouldn't be able to explain all this quickly here, but I'll try to focus on two things. So this is referred to as the knowledge structure. Now, so anything in the BIM initiative is either related to the knowledge structure, it is based on knowledge structure, but it is then, this knowledge structure is used by the community on specific projects. Okay, so in the initiative we have three main things: the knowledge structure, the community, and how to manage the community, and the specific projects. Focus on the knowledge structure. It has what we refer to as 5 sets. So foundations, blocks, tools, workflows, and views. Using these in combination, we can do nearly everything we want to do. So I'm going to focus today just on 2 of these, on foundations and blocks. So foundations are all, if you want a peer-reviewed research we do. Okay, it's really the published journal papers. It would be the peer-reviewed materials that will include new models or new taxonomies or ontologies, etc. So this is the typical research that we do, but this is in its form. It's not really usable for the typical practitioner. So we distill these into something we refer to as blocks. And the blocks are, and you can see here 5 of them. There's more, but these are the ones which we are interested in today. And we have 5 of these blocks. And you see how we're going to use these to expand upon the competence model and make it more integrated. Excuse me. So let's start. Let's start with the dictionary item, which is the foundation of any conceptual hierarchy, meaning, I don't know if you agree, but typically when we're building a framework or a conceptual model, we always start with the terminology. Then we build the taxonomies, and then we build the models, and then we build the frameworks. So the dictionary item, this is an example like bill of quantities or information requirements. And this is, if you want, the block type. This is the dictionary item. This is the description. And I'll show you an example. So this is if you want the conceptual structure of what we refer to as dictionary item. So it would have like a specific function. Where do we get it from? You know, how do we translate it? What's its syntax? You can see some examples, and the typical uses, etc. And where you can find the list. And all of these blocks end up being in an inventory. So, for example, the dictionary items inventory management system, if you want, is the BIM dictionary. Currently, it includes 808, so 800 items. This is just in English, but they're then translated, and now they're further expanded. And this is available under Creative Commons, so anybody can use it. This is an example. So again, as a dictionary item would mean the term title, the description. It will include the labels, etc. So here you can see it in English, you can see it in Spanish, you see it in Chinese. And if you look at it, and this is what we're doing with it, we're expanding dictionary items, so it's not only in English, which we refer to as common international term, but now we're connecting it to a terminology from the standards. We are adding normative content to it, region-specific content to it, meaning notes. There will be country editors adding notes to each dictionary item. There would be a country editor from Brazil, country editor from Portugal, country editor from Spain, from Chile, etc. So it's different to just having terms and descriptions in English and they're translated. There's a lot to be discussed here, but in general, this is the block, the dictionary item block, and this is type of fields we have for it, is the first block. Now, the second block, which we are really interested in, is the action statement, this is an expansion of the competency item. So here, second one, and here we see an example, the same example we've seen before. Establish project information requirements. This is, if you want, its card. What is it? An action statement is a sentence. What's its function? What does it do? It identifies an ability, activity, or outcome. It must be measurable. Where do we get it from? We get it from available ontologies. We could parse documents. We could scrape at web. We can go through the web and capture these. And it's organized into similar, if you're familiar with the 2013 work, we can organize these action statements not in tiers, sets, and topics, but now we can further organize them against limitless number of labels. And so this is the example, establish project information requirement. And there is the reference that comes from also another resource from the initiative called the competence table. There's other lists, which we international list. Currently, we have 478 of these. Expect this number to grow dramatically in the future. Currently, it's part of a tool, a commercial tool that in my company we developed. But like the dictionary, dictionary started as part of a commercial tool, and then it was released. So hopefully, in the near future, we're able to release these statements as part of open tool. But at the moment, it's part of the assessor. But you can see here, like how the statements look. Like, for example, this is our statement. Establish the project information requirements. It has a description. It has a type. So, for example, now the action in action statement, and each statement would have an action. There's like a kind of 30 or 40 of these actions. And these actions have a specific meaning. And this is an issue an important issue when you're trying to assess the competence of an individual or capability of an organization to use very structured language. So establish would mean something different to determine would mean something different to define, etc. And there's types of these statements, and they're connected to the dictionary, and it has a description. And here, information requirements really is a term derived from international standards, from ISO 19650 Part 2, and this is the description that clarifies what this statement really is all about. It's about appointing party, which again, appointing party is not the client; it's just a function. So appointing party could be the contractor, could be the owner. So you see here the expansion of the competence item into something that has not only an action connected to the dictionary, but also has a description, has a type, has labels, etc. And also as an expansion of the 2013 work that, if you're familiar with it, you know that competence items were distributed by what we refer to as tier, like core tier, domain tier, and execution tier, and a domain had 8 sets and 55 topics, etc. But now can expand further. Before, we used to refer to competence item as a combination of skill, knowledge, and attitude. But because of the experience that we had in the past 10 years, we really added experience as a separate ingredient, because the metrics for experience are different than the metrics for knowledge and skill and attitude. And I always give this same example, simple example, that if you're measuring the competence of someone who drives a car, you can look at their skill, how they can manage that car, and how to, move the steering wheel and accelerate and stop, etc. Knowledge would be about the rules of driving, where to stop, etc. The attitude, if the person is an aggressive driver or the opposite. And experience, whether a person has experience in driving in snow, in the rain, at night, etc. So all these are different metrics. So this is an expansion of the original competence item to include experience. And I'm sure you can think of use cases when measuring competence of a student, where you can, especially mature age students, where the experience play a big role. And also within setting, we can separate the competences from being something that within an organization to be foundational, that everyone needs to have it, or it's role specific or function specific, or it's use specific. Use specific meaning you need specific competencies for specific information uses, which I'm going to cover next. Like, for example, you want to design rather than to analyze, sunlight and shadow, etc. Now, the third block, which you see, complements this idea of a more integrated competence model. And an example of information use, let's just first explain what information use is. So information use is kind of a block that, like a kind of a sentence, again, or a couple of words that tries to identify the information that need to be represented when delivering a project. So, for example, I'm going to use the example of clash detection. So say clash detection is really model-based. So it's a model use. Information use of 3 types. So this is also all covered in one of the in the latest paper published in 2020, and also in the previous paper. The idea is, if we want to use information, we need to define how to use it. For example, we have access so much information on a project, and we can require so much information. So it's important to find a way to find, like taxonomy or classification on a kind of a model to define how we're going to use this information. So, for example, you say, I want this information to be used for seismic analysis. I want this information to be used for cost estimation. So when when party A delivers to party B a model or a document or even a data set, it must be fit for use. If it's going to be used for clash detection or going to be used for quantity estimation or cost planning or whatever it is. And there's a taxonomy for information uses. As I mentioned, it breaks down the document uses and data uses and model uses. And each one of them would be a taxonomy. And if you focus on one of them, it also breaks down into multiple taxonomies. And you can see here an example of this, the clash detection. It has a representation in a dictionary. And you see the connection here between information use and dictionary item. And here you can see it in English and in Portuguese. It has an activity flow diagram. It has a series of activities. And for the keen-eyed person, they will notice that the activity flow list is really statements. It has the action. It has the same structure as a statement. So really, when defining information use, and this is what organizations would do, like when we're trying to exchange information between them, they have to define how this information is used in the digital space. And again, as a higher or more complex or like a kind of a rich knowledge block, it has lots of fields. And also, there's a list that you can download sorry, from the bimexcellence.org website, and it clarifies, the 75 domain model uses, and Professor Regina has been working on this project with her, amazing team in expanding these model uses into something we refer to as model use template, but that's a different discussion. Now let's look at defined roles, which is another knowledge block. And here you see we've covered this basic block as a dictionary item. We look at the statements, and then we went into something a bit more complex like information uses. And now we look at defined roles. Defined roles is also a way of understanding the functions of a person in a specific context. Meaning, like an example of a defined role is a BIM manager or senior engineer. And the reason it's called defined, again, it comes from the maturity index. So defined means it's articulated. So it's a structured description of a human actor with specific functions. It's a human readable summary. It's intended for humans. Typical use would be to generate role titles, role descriptions, and role competency profiles. And how would people use defined roles is, especially when they're doing a change effort within an organization, as they adopt, let's say, BIM or any digital transformation effort, they say, okay, how can I change your competency profile of my roles? I have these hundreds of engineers. I want them to be digital engineers. What does that mean? I want them to become digitally enabled engineers. I want them to be able to use BIM on their own, whatever it is, or to generate digital twins. Defined roles come into play here. Say, okay, if this is what you want, you need to now to define your role in a structured way. And this is where this knowledge block uses other blocks as well to do it. And the way the defined role uses, moves forward, it relies on lots of a taxonomy. So it has like what we refer to as a role class. So, for example, a role could be class E. We can refer to it as a leader. Doesn't matter the labels. Doesn't matter the number of classes. What matters is to have a role class. It could be 4, it could be 3, it have different names. It must have a scale. So is this role is project role? Is it within an organization? Is it across the whole country? Like some roles are across the whole market. What's the discipline of the role, and what does it cover as a territory? We use these taxonomies to define these roles. So for example, it's kind of like a simple formula. And this is the beauty of competency models. It allows you to do things like that. So for example, we could say, like, if we have a BIM, domain is BIM, it could be PLM, it could be GIS, it could be anything. So a BIM project coordinator for structures in the UK. So this is a kind of a very specific role, which exists, of course. And then we use this formula to define the competence profile. A simpler example would be like a BIM manager, which means, depending on the size of the company, it could be the BIM manager for the whole company here. So, and then we use these, syntax. This syntax for roles based on taxonomy is very well defined. Taxonomy is coming from, international classifications and from the BIM initiative as well. To then say, okay, if we want to create a profile made of statements, okay, and these statements are made of a combination of dictionary items and information users, we can start building the profile. So for example, we say, okay, these are the statements specific to anyone who works in the domain of BIM. They need to know this. But if, depending on the scale, they work on projects or they work within an organization, like internally focused, these are the specific statements they need. And then based on their class, are they a leader, a manager, a coordinator, a trainer, whatever, like a user, then you can add specific statements for that class. Then if they are general or they have a specific discipline, they're steel engineers, they're the HVAC engineers, they're interior designers, urban planners, whatever it is, we can add specific statements from that domain. And if they are focused on specific territory, meaning you need to be specialized in specific territory. Like for example, like I mentioned in the BIM manager for structures in the UK, they have to know the legal issues related to information management within that territory. By using this formula, we can isolate the statements needed to define the role, or we can use a matrix, which is a simpler way of doing it. Also here you can see statements, you can see dictionary items, and against the classes, and you can create a profile, like a kind of a profile, like for a construction manager, what they expected to have at what level, and you can use this to assess them or to develop learning materials for them or to provide certification for them, which leads us to the last block I'm going to cover today, which is really interrelated with all of them. And this is just an example of a learning unit, like let's call it strategic BIM management at master's level. And how do you define it? And this is just a sample. It includes these. This module will include these, subjects. Within these subjects, there are these sets of statements which are connected to specific information users, specific dictionary items, etc. So really, these blocks are interconnected and provide a chance to use each one of them more efficiently because they support each other. So this is, if you look at it, if you put it all together and just use visual shapes here, because of course we can generate more formal structures, schemas based on this. So for example, the dictionary item is connected to the action statement. So information required inside here. this is another one here. We have clash detection. All of them, could populate a defined role, meaning the senior manager need to have, to be able for the specific company to have 5 information users specific competence level, and these information users include hundreds of statements, and these statements include specific dictionary items to explain the meaning of complex terms, especially with the ones coming from standards, etc. And the learning units is connected to action statements, because we can create a learning unit based on action statements for a specific defined role, etc. And we connected, but also we can extend it further and further, and this depends on the number of blocks we're going to expand it. And this is an activity flow, like any business process modeling annotation, or any kind of representation of a flow. Doesn't matter what it is, but if it's done in the spirit of integration, then each one of these activities is actually a statement. It has an action, and it could have a terminology within it. All of them are statements. And you notice this one also has a dictionary item in it. So really, it's not just about integrating dictionary items with statements with information users with roles and learning units, but also in activity flows, which really is a sequence of statements. It's this, and this activity flow could represent an information use, etc. I know there's a lot there, and it need to be unpacked. This is a summary, and maybe we have a chance to discuss this. The intention behind me presenting this is I want to discuss the importance of having a digital first competence model which is integrated. And to do that, many people would think, not all, that this is too difficult. But really, it's not. If we break it down into simple structures like a term, a role, a statement, a unit, etc., but it's done in a structured way, we can build a really good and integrated competence model. So it is possible to do it. It's possible to do it efficiently as well. And based on experience using something like this, it becomes really easy to connect the learning outcomes in a measurable way with assessments, surveys, etc., and implementation activities and flows, process maps, etc. And having an integrated competence model is really important because of this fast-paced transformation. So we need a way to respond to this digitalization. We need to respond to, to the creeping standardization, which is really, the number of standards that have been published in the past couple of years is more than what has been published in our domain for the past 10 years. And we need to find a way to manage all this in order to better serve, of course, industry, better serve the students, and connect our educational activities with what is needed and required in the changing industry. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to hear you. Sometimes very difficult to connect all things, but very, very nice.
Thank you.
We have 10 minutes for Q&A. So I have a first question for you. That slide that you showed, the learning unit, where you put all the phrases that how we should express the statements in what we want somebody to learn. I think that
Mhm.
we as teachers, when we prepare our classes, we never go that deep. We never write the statements as short as you have put. I don't think we have this ability, or this ability was taught us. That comes from pedagogy, you know, and we are engineers and architects, and so how can we get to this?
Actually, developing these statements, they are much simpler than people think. Really, they need a structure, and then whatever you have, and this is really how they are developed anyway. You look at a course curriculum, and you can just decipher it into dot points, like as a first pass. Okay, what is this module all about? It's trying to teach what are the learning outcomes from this module, and then summarize it into dot points, and then as a first pass, and the second pass to make it structured. So okay, so here is trying to capture the level of understanding. Here is they're trying to ask the student to demonstrate something, etc. So you can use Bloom taxonomy if you wish, but the general idea is it's quite an easy exercise if it's done in these like iterations. So simplify, make it into like statements, then make these statements structured, and then you have it. It's not as hard as it looks.
Yeah, I can see that you are building a real detailed and large-scale framework to express all these competencies. Do you have an idea of when it will be available?
Now, the topics themselves are already published, as part of the initiative. And there is a link in the slides for a document referred to as competence table. It includes like 55 topics and sample items or sample statements from each of these topics. The full inventory will not be useful anytime soon, or not be available anytime soon, and won't be useful if it's released as a whole. It will need to be released in let's say, for example, we have a course that we want to transform into this way of thinking. We can start there. So the structure will be used to transform an existing module into this language. But if we want to release everything now, it will, unless there's a tool to manage it properly, it will not be helpful. It will be just a list of stuff.
Right.
So I'm hoping in a couple of years' time, we'll have a tool, similar how we have the BIM dictionary to manage terminology or dictionary items. We will have an explorer for statements, like we're hoping to have an explorer for information users, like model users, etc. So once it's a tool, anybody can use it. Currently, it's still within a domain of researchers and people like us trying to figure things out.
Well, I put here in the chat the link for the 201 table with the competencies. I also put here the DOI of your automation in construction 2013 paper, which you presented also here, right?
Right.
Are there any questions? Anybody has a question here? We have till 11:35 to stay here with Bilal Succar. Carol, please.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Always very inspiring. And I would like to ask you, you mentioned there is an unbalance between what academy teaches and the market needs, the demands. And I would like to know, in your opinion, in which extent we should teach what the industry wants and not the other way around. Like we sometimes I see that my colleagues have resistance about BIM because they think that is something industry is pushing And that happens with a lot of subjects. And I would like to know, well, should we give the industry more options, or should the industry pushes us to teach what they need?
Thank you, Karine, for this question. We investigated this as part of the work we've done with the Australian Institute of Architects and Engineers back in 2012, 2013. Took a year or so to do it. The best way to do it is not for anyone to advise, like industry to advise academia, or academia to go and invest. It doesn't work. People have tried this many times. The best approach would be to develop some kind of neutral institute to capture and define these statements, competency items, and then to add attributes to each of these statements. Say this is best delivered by a university, this is best delivered by a technical university, this is best delivered by a training institution. This provides transparency with all the topics and minimizes overlap. Okay, because some topics are better done by organizations, meaning whatever the universities do, it's better to be done within organizations, and some topics organizations cannot do. So the job of this type of work is just to bring transparency, systemization, modularity, so there's less overlap and clarity and better ways to measure.
Bilal, we have a network of universities in Brazil that are being facilitated to develop a BIM implementation plan in their curricula. And when we find a class, a content that that naturally incorporates BIM, and also the professor is willing to do it, we ask the professor to look at your table 2001 of BIM competencies and find these competencies in the content that the class approaches. And also we tell them, we do a mix with Bloom taxonomy, because you have the BIM implementation, BIM development, BIM in administration, BIM in managing functions, or BIM in operational set, which are the uses. Sometimes the competencies that are inside these sets can be approached in different levels of complexity, going from understanding to applying and creating. Do you think that doing this mix of the Bloom taxonomy with your set of competencies is consistent?
Absolutely. That's actually separating the metric from the statement is intentional, because industry and academia use different metrics to measure competence. So for different parties and at different levels within frameworks to use these inventories, the type of measurement and the mode of delivery should be separate, so like added differently. So statements you can apply Bloom as a metric to the statements, okay? While industry will not use Bloom. No, I don't know anyone in industry that uses Bloom. They will use either the competency index, or they will use something simpler like a 3-colored, green, orange, red, whatever they want, okay? What matters is that there's still a common language between academia and industry by separating the metric from the state, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I don't know if we have any other raised hands, but we have reached 11:35 for us. For you, maybe would be 2 o'clock or 1:30 in the morning, right? So
yeah, it's 1:30, but all good here.
Okay, so here
Thanks so much for the invitation.
Yeah, here we have in this room around 42 people watching you. We are mostly all professors university professors and here discussing BIM education. Shir just came in.
Hello, Sergio, Professor Sergio.
So
Good to see you.
we'd like to thank you so much.
Good
And maybe you can have a finishing line, a finishing thought for us.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I think you know, your group, it's very consistent, and I always try to read the things that you publish. It's very prolific. Congratulations, and very consistent. But I've always said Brazil is ahead of many countries in the research domain when it comes to digital transformation, and your group is a proof of that. So thank you again for the great effort, and looking forward to meeting you in person soon, hopefully.